Hello, everyone. Welcome to Midweek Gaming. I'm Nico inside of the comms, of course. Justin providing his audio commentary and video feed. So, what a week in gaming it has been, or what a 2 weeks it has been. And we're slightly behind on this one. Today we'll be talking about the PS5 Pro. Oh boy, I genuinely did not actually think there would be a PS5 Pro, so I'm eating this shoe right now. I genuinely remember telling many people that don't expect one, it'll never happen, listing several reasons, and here we are. And it happened. Well, Sony made me just look like an idiot, so, well, whatever though. Just roll with the punches. So, PS5 Pro. What to say about this one, legitimately? It is interesting due to the fact that it has several, let's first off start by saying that the PS5 Pro is, by all accounts, hardware-wise, a quarter to half step up from the PS5 base. Like, I'm not going to argue that. We have several things in the description if you want to get the specifics of, its features and yada yada yada. One of them's a PlayStation blog. Well, two of them are PlayStation blog. One of them talks about another topic we'll get into later, but one of them is just them talking about the PS5 Pro, its benefits, and yada yada yada. Another's a Verge article that kind of goes into more the nitty gritty of the differences, but suffice to say that, by the blog's own admission, the Pro itself is an upgraded GPU, with, in their own words, 67% more compute units. Now I'm just going to go on a limb and say that probably just means that its computing module just has a longer string of ones and zeros attached. That's my guess. How much is 67%? I don't know, because I don't know the full compute units they use. But suffice to say it's larger. And as a result, apparently, again in their own words, it is 28% faster memory, which is good, because that means processing is far faster. And this translates to a 45% faster rendering for gameplay. So it's actually much better. So that means that bigger open worlds like Horizon Zero Dawn and stuff like that, maybe we're seeing an end to that kind of thing where you could do that in Horizon, where if you turn around really suddenly, you just see a blank, empty world because it hasn't rendered in yet. Maybe that's the end of stuff like that. Who knows? And of course, the big thing that was the selling point with the original PS5 is ray tracing. It has been improved in the Pro. Specifically, they've added, in their own words, a more powerful ray tracing that provides, and I quote, more dynamic reflections and refraction of light. This allows the rays to be cast at double and at times triple the speed of the current PS5 console. So there you have it. Their ray tracing is supposedly more advanced in the Pro, which will allow light to bounce around much faster and presumably give you much better results in terms of the overall end product, which is again pretty nice. Ray tracing is definitely something that, in general, with games has been fairly hit or miss. I mean, there's been a few games that have done absolutely gorgeous ray tracing, and then there's other games that they
Yeah,
haven't. But
yeah. Some of the more modern AAA have been hit or misses on that front. Yeah.
I mean, you can't really blame them per se. It's a
No.
fairly new tech implemented in the industry by game industry standards, so it's not like everyone has like the science down pat yet. And
No.
you also have to remember that like the GPUs required to run that, like the RTX series for Nvidia is kind of like the benchmark for like you have to have an RTX just to run that kind of thing, and that only came out literally the RTX series at the time of the PS5's launch back in 2020. So 2020, 2019. So, it's a pretty new tech, all things considered. So there's not a lot of games on the market who, A, use it, and B, there's not
And
a lot of people who have the stuff for that.
and that's the other thing about it too is like you're not gonna have too many people who have that as well. More often than not, you're going to have like 5 years before at least maybe like a third at the most, if you're hopeful, a third of like the total number of players or not players, people actually having that hardware. So
That's a thing,
it'll
right?
it'll be a while.
Yeah, and you also have to factor in the fact that when the console generation that we're in currently kicked off, it technically was the first generation in my mind that was actually delayed somewhat because the whole COVID situation caused factories to shut down. Then there was a whole chip shortage, which only exacerbated the process. And that basically resulted in a lot of demand, but not a lot of supply. So between the scalpers and the people that actually got them, there just weren't a lot of units on the market in general. So the stuff that was going out onto the market kind of slowed down, which resulted in the overall rollout of the current generation of consoles just not being as quick as it usually is, meaning that a lot of games kind of had to keep playing with the old hardware for a while. I mean, remember back when the PS5 and Xbox Series came out, they were still doing like for a few years mandatory PS4 versions of those games alongside them because they knew not everyone had the new hardware. They just couldn't get it.
Mm.
So that slowed down everything, and that's the first time I've ever actually seen uh, a mandate from the big companies to actually have an older generation version of that game, just because there just was not enough
There
people with
is
the new hardware.
no other choice if they want to have players actually purchase their game.
Yeah, which is an interesting kind of note that we bring up the whole disc version, because I'm going to get sidetracked for a moment about the other big feature they're selling with it, to say that the PS5 Pro actually does something that I didn't even expect, which is, like I said, impressive considering I didn't even think the Pro would exist at all. And that is that it has no disk drive. None. Nada. Zero.
Nope.
There is no disc and diskless version like the base PS5. There's just no disc, period. This is an interesting choice. As far as I've read so far, I haven't found an official statement from PlayStation commenting on the reasoning, but I'm willing to take a crack and say that it might have one of two reasons, possibly a bit of both. One's a pretty cynical reason, the other is a pretty understandable reason. I'll start with the cynical first just to get it out of the way, and that is that this is kind of another step towards PlayStation getting people into that whole games as a service model. And this is not surprising. This has kind of been the trend in the games industry for a long time now with the big companies, is that they want to move to the kind of Netflix for gaming service kind of thing. And from a business perspective, anyway, it makes sense, right? You don't have to spend money printing discs, and you control the licensing, and everything's a lot easier to control, and da 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 da. And there's just a lot of benefits that come with them for that. Me, I personally don't care much for that idea because I like holding physical discs. I'm old-fashioned that way. Plus, there's also the argument you can make that, if you only have the license, then you don't really have the game. And if that's the case, there's the whole possibility of, kind of
Them just
Stadia
kind of
brought this up
taking it
with.
away.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Stadia kind of brought that up with the idea of like, unless you own the license, right? And even then, there are moments when that license might no longer be usable versus a disc where if you have it, you might not have the most updated version, but provided it doesn't need like web connection, you can still play it. So, but that's a whole other can of worms. But yeah, so that's one reason that kind of pushed towards the more disc side of things. The more optimistic reason you could say is that they just didn't have the space. I mean, think about it, right? We're looking at a much more powerful console that is physically, as far as the photos show, taller than its base model. And it has a revamped cooling unit, and that's taking up space, and the big processor, which, again, remember, ray tracing and stuff like these are still consoles that are still beaten out a long ways by like top end GPUs and stuff like that on the market for PCs, which themselves are not only way more expensive than the entire console itself, but also, in some cases, just about as large. So, you kind of have to think of the fact that because of all the upgrades, maybe they just didn't have the space for a disk drive. Or even if they did put the disk drive in, A, it would jack up the price of an already expensive console, which we'll get to the price in a bit. And also the fact that, you know, they just would have to make an already bulky console even bulkier, which that would also bring in issues for like
That brings
shipping and people
issues on it in
handling and
itself.
yeah, so it might have just been better at the end of the day when they just sat down between the first and second reason to just say, to hell with it, scrap the disk drive if they want one. The PlayStation themselves are saying that you can kind of go the same way they're kind of going with the Slim, where you can buy an optional disk drive, which is like, I think $80 US on its own, which you can attach. Also, I think I remember hearing that a Blu-ray player apparently works. If you connect the Blu-ray player to the PS, it works supposedly, but don't quote me on that one. I don't have the PS Slim. I have the base PS5, so I don't know any of these tactics if they work. But again, I wouldn't be surprised if they're selling the disc drive. But as for the Blu-ray player, don't quote me. But so there's that. And this kind of feeds into the whole will I recommend the console, but again, we'll shelve that for now, and we'll kind of use that to wrap up the end of this whole video expose. But moving on back to what they're selling it as, another big feature of the three big features they're kind of selling this console on is, say it with me now, AI implementation. Good lord, everything
AI
these days is
generation, AI implementation, AI
every
suggestion.
Everything these days has AI in it. Truly, Cortana from the old days of Microsoft would shed a tear if she could. But I mean, yeah, they have AI-driven upscaling in this thing, which supposedly, in their words again from the article, introduces PlayStation Special Super Resolution, which means something to somebody. Basically, it means that the AI upscaling will allow them to make images look better and sharper and the usual stuff that comes with it. I think actually that's already something that's played out in a lot of games already. I don't remember the exact term for it, but basically AI upscaling has been something. I think it's like DLSS or something like that, but I think that's something else. I don't remember the exact term, but basically it was a thing that was introduced in the industry that kind of allows AI upscaling in games, and it allows them to make them better. There's a whole conversation there on if that's being used a bit too much in games these days, but that's a whole conversation for another day. But yeah, so AI is being implemented in the new PS5 Pro. Shocker, shocker, I know. But those are the kind of three big selling points for the PlayStation. It's more powerful, it's advanced ray tracing, and it's AI-driven upscaling. Which, side note, the other article from The Verge actually mentioned that supposedly, as a result of this greater power, at least when it comes to 4K gaming, the people who played on the consoles, you'll know what I'm talking about, the choice between performance and resolution will become a thing of the past, because supposedly now you can run both at the same time, because the console is strong enough to support both performance and fidelity at 4K at the same time now, which is good. I was legitimately thinking we would have to wait all the way up till PS6 to get something like that, so it's genuinely nice to see that kind of thing. Supposedly this new console will also support 8K gaming, but God knows I haven't seen a single game that has had 8K gaming in it. Um, I think the original PS5 actually also had like 8K support. I think it says that on the box still, legitimately. But again, nobody ever went to the point of having 8K gaming, so it's there for somebody. I don't know. Maybe we'll get the next Forza or something that has like 8K car resolution. Lord knows they put all their budget into the bloody graphics. I mean, when you're a racing game, it's not like you have many things to put the budget into outside the licensing fees. But, anyways. So that's kind of like the big selling points of the PS5 Pro. Which brings us back to the question I'm sure you're all asking. That's nice, Nick, but how much?
How
Well,
much is money? Fair amount.
supposedly, according to PlayStation, this thing is going to go on sale for $699 US and 699 pounds when this thing does go on sale.
Yes.
Which is just shy of $700, so let's just call a toad here and just say it's selling for $700.
Mind you, don't ignore the part where I'm pretty sure there's a conversion difference between US and UK, and both of them are quote unquote being charged the same amount. The number is the exact same, but the conversion might not be.
I mean, let's be frank here. Let's be frank. When you do stuff like this, generally they sell it lesser to these countries than they do more. I mean, we saw the same thing with Canada when the PS5 itself came out. I don't remember what the price was back then for the PS5 when it first came out, but it was basically a set price in the US and I think the UK as well. And then like Canada and Australia, they just got the base price, which was more expensive than that. And it's typical marketing it's typical marketing tactic. Basically what they'll do is they'll take the biggest markets where they're expecting the biggest turnout, the biggest profits, and they'll try to like cap the price at a point where they believe it's more likely people will buy it at. Considering the console itself, maybe they're thinking, okay, it's more likely people will buy this at a $700 price than a $900 to $1,000 price. It's probably more likely to retail in Canada, for example, at like 800 something, but again,
You know.
that's just me spitballing numbers here. I don't know how much it takes to build this thing, but my guess is, considering all the graphics tech, a lot. Like I said, a graphics card alone that's cutting edge these days is more expensive in and of itself than this entire console. So, you know, they cost like $1,000, I think, legit. But, and that's on the cheaper end, I think. But, you know, it's stuff like this. And if you're wondering when the date is, supposedly this thing is going to hit shelves on the 7th of November, so not too long off. Around the holiday season. This is definitely something that could fit into the holiday window, which is unsurprising because when you have something like this, you're definitely going to want to fit it into the holiday kind of release window schedule because Christmas gifts, Christmas gifts.
Is a good Christmas.
But so yeah, that's the price, that's when it releases, and all that. Now we kind of come to the third chapter of the video, so to speak. Would I recommend this? Generally speaking, like, when it comes to pro units, right? Generally my answer is no. It would be no, anyway. But in the case of the PS5 Pro, I'm gonna be honest with you, I genuinely don't know. Like, usually my recommendation when it comes to pro units is this. If you do not have a PS5, then, or you do not have the console already, like, this was basically what other people were saying back in the PS4 Pro's day, which I agreed with. If you do not have the base console, if you do not have a base PS4 or a base Xbox, then get the pro units. But when it comes to the PS5 Pro, I genuinely can't say that because I genuinely don't see like processing wise it is an upgrade. Again, I've said this entire video. It is genuinely an upgrade in terms of actual power. But the big thing that's preventing me from saying yes, if you do not have the PlayStation, if you've been holding off for the Legendary Pro to come out and get the most powerful unit on the market at the moment, get this, the reason that's preventing me from saying this is the lack of disk drive. And the reason for that is simply this. While it is said that the PlayStation Pro will have backwards compatibility of its predecessor, and because of the AI upscaling, some of those old games are actually going to look better, and that's all well and good, except for one key problem. If your collection of PS4 games is on disc, or PS5 games is on disc, due to the lack of disk drive, unless you get the extra add-on, or again, you use the technique of the Blu-ray player, again, don't quote me, all of your disc collection is effectively defunct. You're going to have to rebuy that all on the PlayStation Store, which in some cases, in some games, you can't even do. But that's for much older games. But the point still stands that if you don't have them on the store already, you're going to have to rebuy them, or again, buy the expensive player, which, like I said, you go the $80 extra player for the Slim, that's an extra $80 you're shelving out on top of an already expensive console. Or the Blu-ray player, but again, don't quote me. So you're adding price onto price, plus even if you have all the money in the world, even if you're, you know, Jeff Bezos.
Stack so much. Like that's the big problem with this overall, is it is very quickly going to stack on top of one another.
Yeah, and even if you're Jeff Bezos in terms of money, even if you're like a rich kid and says, fuck it, I got the money, whatever, you also have to remember the space, right? You got a big console, which again, physically looks bigger than its predecessor, and now you've got an extra disk drive, which you're going to have to stick somewhere in relatively close proximity to it, so that's going to take up even more space, which
And
These
who
consoles
knows
aren't meant to
how
be portable
big
already.
that's going to be.
Yeah, and these things aren't meant to be portable as is. And again, even if you're not going to move the thing around, which again, generally you won't, but even if you weren't, that's again, if do you have the space for a massive console plus the however big disc player that is? Maybe, but maybe not. So, between the money and the size, I don't know. And again, that's not even factoring in the previous point about that whole collection thing. If you have your PlayStation collection on disc, you're gonna have to rebuy all of that because, like I said, unless you go with the extra option for the disc, you can't use any of it. So at the end of the day, while this console is a genuine improvement in terms of performance of its predecessor in almost every way, and in a pretty good way, I would argue, the lack of disc functionality, I cannot, with the lack of disc, I cannot directly say if you do not have the PlayStation 5 already get this one. That would be generally, like I said, what I would say when it comes to pro units in general. Like I said, that was the running mentality with the 4. If you don't have the 4 already, get the 4 Pro. But because of the lack of disc, I just can't say that. And I will admit, I am biased. Like I've said in this video, I think already, I prefer discs. I'm old-fashioned that way. And I generally, when I was selling these consoles myself, when I worked as a salesman for PlayStation, because yes, I used to do that.
I did that for a period of time.
It was a temp contract. But, you know, when I would generally tell people get the base one instead of the disc because of a myriad of reasons, but mostly due to the functionality. Because again, you're going to have to go purely on the PlayStation Store, and for some people, that's completely fine. And if you're one of those people, all the power to you. But if you already have a collection of games on disc, then those games are effectively defunct. Again, unless you shell out for the extra disc player.
Yep.
That's both
added
more
cost.
money and more space.
Yeah, like that's the major thing that people need to take from this is the fact that they're basically forcing added costs just to go and play the games that you've already bought.
Yeah. And again, this is already a pretty expensive console as is. The base PlayStation is for 500, and as The Verge themselves even says, when this thing comes out, it's probably gonna get discounted. This thing is $700 base, and again, that's probably the price they're capping it at for the US and UK markets, just for the sake of that's where their biggest market share is. Lord knows in places like Australia and Canada, it's probably gonna be even more expensive because we don't get the special treatment that the UK does or that the US does, sadly. So, you know, granted, in terms of space, it is said that the PS5 Pro is going to come in at 2 terabytes SSD. So it's got a lot of space for those games that you will inevitably have to download, unless, again, you buy the disc expansion. But, it's still something to consider. So, all in all, Nick's final verdict, would he recommend this? Don't know. I can't say
100%?
yes, but I can't say no.
Can't tell for 100%.
Yeah. Generally, I'd like to walk away from here and say, get it or don't get it. But in this case, I genuinely can't say because it will depend mostly on you. Well, it'll always mostly depend on you, the customer. But when it comes to the functionality, it is very much, like I said, a case-per-case basis. So my end result would be, it'll depend on you. If you don't have a PlayStation 5 and you're coming into the PlayStation ecosystem, if you're willing, have the money and have the space to buy this, possibly buy the disc if you want to go disc, or buy the disc drive if you want to have the disc drive, then do this. Because the PS6, or whatever the heck it's going to be then, probably PS6, is probably not going to be for another of years at this point still. And if you want to get it and you don't have discs, or if you have discs and you want to upgrade, get it if you have the space and you have the resources and everything like that. Sure. But if you don't have the money, or if you don't have the space, or both, or if you just don't want to have to rebuy everything or, go through the hassle, then don't bother. It's, like I said, it's at the end of the day, it's an upgrade in performance, but is it worth, all the hassle that comes with it? Like I said, that's only something you can decide. Sorry,
Yeah.
I can't give you a more concrete answer with this one, but like I said, this is genuinely
You
one I
are
can't
your
decide.
best judge on whether or not something is worth your time, your effort, your money.
I mean, that's a rule of thumb for everything, right?
Hmm.
But like I said, in this case, I'm sorry I can't give you guys a more concrete answer. I genuinely hoped I would be able to, because like I said, with the 4, I could. But with this one, like I said, due to the lack of disk drive, it's far more of a case-by-case basis, and it's kind of a what are you willing to put up with kind of thing. Will I upgrade? No. That would be my only concrete answer I can give you. I will not be upgrading. But if you guys want to, go ahead. Speaking of upgrading, though, our final point of the night, supposedly for PlayStation's 30th anniversary, because on the side note, they're celebrating the 30th anniversary. The PS5 or PS5 Pro will have a kind of limited edition design, and I think this is going to be. Let me just read this article over one more time so I can get the facts straight here. I kind of threw this on near the end of the video, so you'll forgive me if I don't know it off the top of my head here. But okay, yeah, no. So basically, what they're going to be doing is also they're going to be having a PS5 Pro console 30th anniversary limited edition bundle. So basically, it's going to have all the stuff of the base PS5 Pro, as well as a styling that's going to kind of mirror the original PS1 in terms of, aesthetic and stuff like that. A limited edition poster, possibly one of 30 designs. So it's a roll of the dice which one you get. PS Plus sticker, or PlayStation sticker, 4 PlayStation shaped cable ties, which, I'm gonna lie, they look pretty nice. PlayStation paperclip, which, not gonna lie, that looks like a printer's worst nightmare. And they're also going to be doing a similar design for the PlayStation 5 as well. The base looks like just the digital version, though. Hold up. Yeah, it looks like just the base digital version, which, again, that's a whole other thing, but yeah, they're going to be doing basically a 30th anniversary bundle for the PlayStation Pro and the digital version for the base PS. And again, it'll come with everything I just said previously for the 5, as well as that kind of like or should I say, in that style of kind of like the retro look for the PS1 with that kind of color scheming to it. How'd you like the taste of freedom? And apparently there's also a remote player, PlayStation Remote Player 30th anniversary, which is going to be a standalone. And a wireless controller 30th anniversary, which will also be a standalone. So there will be a 30th anniversary controller, which you can buy separately, a Edge controller you can buy separately, which for those who don't know, that's that higher end controller which you can replace the sticks to. If you don't have an Edge controller, that definitely would be a controller you'd probably want to get for the 30th anniversary version, because outside of the joysticks, you can really just kind of use those things indefinitely for the most part. The battery might get down, but that's a low thing, so. But yeah, bunch of PlayStation 30th anniversary stuff. When this is releasing, my guess is around the time of the base PS5 itself, or the PS5 Pro itself, because, like I said, that's coming out November 7th, I think it was? Yeah, November 7th, I think it was. Oh, here we go. Here's the date. The anniversary collection, so all the stuff I talked about, the controller, the 30th anniversary controller, the Edge controller, the player gamer, the sets, yada yada. That'll be coming out November 21st. Okay, so it'll be coming out after the PS5 the PS5 Pro hits market. So if you're going to get yourself a PS5 and you want to get yourself the limited edition uh, stuff, then wait till the 21st when this call comes out. And also the casing will apparently have, yeah, the old style button for the old style PlayStation logo from back in the day, which, not gonna lie, it looks pretty nice. It's a simple kind of design look, and this is also going to be a color reflected on the controllers, so all the controllers will also have that kind of like retro PlayStation look, retro PlayStation button look to it, so that'll be your symbol to it, so that'll be kind of nice. But yeah, there's something to tag on the end there, just in case you're interested in the 30th anniversary stuff. Not gonna lie, looks pretty nice. I might get myself one of those Edge controllers or something like that. We will see, though. I'm in the UK currently, though, so again, we will see. But that's all on the topic for today. I've been debating if I'll get an Edge controller for a long time now, and it would definitely be an excuse to get an Edge controller. Get the 30th anniversary Edge controller. But anyways, so that's the show this week, guys. Hope you enjoyed. What are your thoughts tell me your thoughts in the comments. You probably heard this 1,000 times on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, feed the algorithm. And tell me, what do you think of the PlayStation 5 Pro? What do you think? Do you think the release was good? Do you think this is worth it? Do you want to upgrade? Let me know. I'm genuinely curious what the consensus in the public is for the Pro. And just talk about the 30th anniversary if you want to. Are you kidding, the 30th anniversary stuff? Again, no judgment. I very much may. We will have to see. There's a bunch of money stuff going on at the moment, so we'll see. Plus, we'll see if I am able to get my hands on one. But yeah, that's the show this week. Any closing thoughts, Justin?
Nope.
Alright then. That's the show then, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you all enjoyed and have a good night. See you all next week.